So this video is to demonstrate the new permission system. We have switched from what were permissions for each user to a permission configuration system, which basically allows you to set groups of users with the same permissions. So if we jump straight in, we go to the Preferences page and the Permissions tab. You can see here that there are permissions for each of the types of users. So there are permissions for system administrators, students, and community members. If we look into the permissions, so here we are on a sysadmin permission, you can see at the top that there are two users who are on this permission, that's the two in brackets, and there are 6 users who are archived administrators who are also on this permission. If we look into the details of the permission, we have on the left-hand side in bold, these are essentially the page names. So we have an admins page, we have a community page, and if we scroll down, we can see there's an expenses page, finance page, a groups page, and so on. And those are all the pages that a system administrator could see. If we switch to the Students tab, we will see that a student can only see a My Account permission and a resource permission. Within each of those permissions, of course, you can set additional permissions. So within My Account, there are permissions for accessing the journals, permissions for accessing the notes, the documents, and the files. So every permission has 5 individual settable sub-permissions, which are marked with the I, the pen, the plus, the dustbin, and an arrow folder. The I permission is for view. So if you want to allow a person to view a page, you have to tick view permission. The pen is for edit permission. So they need to have view permission. If I turn off view permission for My Account, you'll see that if I click on the My Account view permission, then I can't set edit permission. Edit permission requires view permission. So if I re-enable that, and if I now enable the edit permission there, then I can edit and view that one. So if I switch back to sysadmins, the next permission up is create, and that's the plus. So here on admins, I have the option to create, and the next permission along is the dustbin. I have permission to delete or restore a sysadmin, an admin rather, and on the final one, I have permission to view those admins who have been archived. So let's see what that means in practice. On the left-hand side, we have this person is a system administrator, and on the right-hand side of the screen, this person is an administrator. And if you look at the moment on the right-hand side, that person has access to the admin tab. So the admins are visible. If I click on that, you can see, in fact, this person, there is only one administrator. So if I go to the left-hand menu, click on admins, and deny this person, deny administrators access to administrators, which seems quite reasonable, and I press save, you will see that that view is no longer accessible to the administrator on the right. So if I re-enable that view, I can now give and save it again. I will see the admin page reappear. If I go to admins, you will see that that admin, who is in that case ourselves, cannot be changed. But if I give this person administrative and edit rights, click there, then save it, then they will be able to edit, and those fields on the right are now editable. If I now click on the plus option and save again, a plus button at the top will appear, meaning I can now add new administrators. So you can very finely control who has what permission to see what parts of the system. So if we look at something more detailed now, for example, in admins on the left-hand side, there is an option called admin employment. if I uncheck the view on admin employment there and save, on the right-hand side, you will see the tab for employment has disappeared. If I untick the admin disclosure in a similar manner up above and watch carefully on the right-hand side, the disclosure menu disappears. So again, within a page, you can set very carefully what a person can do. So we'll have a look at the way it looks on the users now. So if I go to the Students tab here on the left, I can see I've set up two types of access for students, a standard student and an advanced student. And if I now go to the Students menu on the left, then I can look into a student and click expand, and then if I go to the right hand side, I can see their permissions, and this student is set as a standard student. If I want to change that student, I just click in student there, and I can set this student to an advanced student and save that, and that student will now have advanced student rights. Underneath, although you can't edit it on this screen, it shows you what the permissions are for that student. And you can see them. If you have permission to edit the permissions for that student, there is a magnifying glass next to the word advanced student. If you click there, it will take you back to the permissions page with that student's option set. So in this case, we're going to give that student permission to edit resources, which is a bit unusual. And so if we go edit resources, we can save that. If we now go back to the student menu, and look at that student, you can now see that edit resources is available as well. If you, in the case of students, it's not too bad, but if you type in the filter on that tab, for example, if you lose a permission, if you type documents in there or just doc, then it will just show you the permissions that have the word doc in there, and that's quite useful for navigating long sets of permissions. So if we go back to the permissions page again, you will be able to see for students, if I clear the filter at the top, you'll be able to see for students, we have two of these options, and there is a default permission. So the default permission is what a new student would be given. So the default permission for students is going to be standard student. If I go into expand standard students and I go into users, I can see which users, including archived users, are associated with that particular permission. And for example here, I noticed that two of the students at the top, Charlie Yamka and James Patel, are in fact boarding students. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new boarding student permission based on the existing standard student. So I'm going to go to the right and press the copy button. I'm going to copy this permission, and at the bottom now you will see there's a standard student's copy. If I change this to boarding student, so I'm going to rename this to boarding student and save that. If I go back to the standard students and look at the users again, I'm going to filter using the tag. I'm going to find all those students who are in boarding. So I click on boarding. So I now got the students in boarding, and I'm going to press the change all permissions and change them to boarding students. And I'm going to set that up. And now those two students will be set into the boarding. So if I look at boarding and users, I can see those two students there. So this is a really powerful mechanism of moving groups of students from one permission to another. So quite a handy feature. That will be particularly useful in community members where you may wish to set different configurations for host families, different configurations for agents, and different configurations for relatives, for parents and so forth. If you want to change the order of these particular drop downs, then you can. There is a drag menu here. So I can move boarding student to the bottom if I want to move that to the bottom and save that. And now on the right hand side, if I went to students, if I was to select a student and it seems I haven't got permission on the administrator on the right hand side to access permissions. So I will go to admins on the left hand side and click on the admins. I can't find this, so I'm just going to go permission and type permission. So I'm looking for the permissions, and I can see I haven't got access to see the student. And if you look on the right-hand side, when this is saved, you will see the permission tab appear for that student. So if I now go to students permissions, then the drop-down menu will be for permissions there, is now in the order I've chosen, which is standard, advanced, and boarding. If I go back to sysadmins on the left-hand tab, if I expand the sysadmins permission and look at the map permission, so if I scroll down, I can see the map permission. The map permission only has a view permission. So we have removed all the extraneous permissions that had no functionality. There is no edit permission on map. You can't edit the map, you can't create a new map, and you can't delete a map, and so forth. So the permissions there are only visible that make any sense. And equally, for example, if I deny administrators access to households, if I unclick that, the entire household section disappears, because if you can't see households, then you can't see any of the sections under households. If I re-enable that, it will all reappear. Again, you're only shown the information that's necessary. Finally, there are other permissions in the system. We thought it might be useful to explain what other permissions are around. So for example, on the left-hand menu, if I select students and I go into David's team page, there are other permissions. If I expand the host family there, John Radford at the top, or Pippa Radford, then there are other permissions here. So for example, can view finance, can claim expenses, can access travel instructions, can provide lift, and so forth. There are additional limits on the particular configuration for Pippa Radford acting for this particular student. And the reason we do that is because different homestays or indeed different users of the system can require different permissions based on their interactions with particular students. So for example, a mother of one student might actually be helping you and providing agent translation services for another student, in which case they would need different permissions for that student. They would probably need to be able to add the can add translation option for that student. They, of course, might be the mother of one student and the aunt of a different student who doesn't need to access the finance information for that student. So you need to check when permission is not available, whether that person has access to the permission in the permission configuration, but also whether they have specific access as part of that team. And finally, for existing users of the system, we have migrated all the permission sets for all our current users into new permission configurations. So we have looked at all the permissions that were available. So if we go to the Preferences tab and have a look at the community members now, what has happened here is a lot of the permissions were the same. You can see the permission called Team Members has got 10 people in it, but Sally Hunt had been set up with a specific set of permissions. So her configuration is set specifically for her. Now that might be a mistake, or that might be what was intended, but this shows you very clearly that Sally Hunt has a different permission set to a general team member. And so you may need to look at that. You can very quickly, if we decide that that was a mistake and we would like that, we can switch to users and we can simply click on the permission for Sally Hunt and make her a regular team member, and she will immediately disappear from that and be part of team members if we save it. And she's there in team members now. So again, in transferring from the old system to the new system, you may wish to delete or rename or reorganize team members. And indeed, Sally Hunt's previous permission set is no longer required, so we can now press delete permission, and that is now a simpler setup. We'd need to work out why Martin Radford and Pippa Radford and Jilu Wong and Jem Wincham are in different groups, and perhaps sort their permissions out as well. So nothing has been lost. Nobody has any more or any fewer permissions than they had before, and you'll be able to reorganize that relatively quickly. If you have any questions, please message us as usual.